Hey guys, Luke here. As you can probably tell from my background, I'm back from Las Vegas and we had an incredible long weekend with a bunch of our Patreons. Thank you so much to everybody who joined us. We shared a bunch of investing DD, we learned from each other, and we had a whale of a time with a whole ton of Vegas spectacular experiences. Christopher and I are going to share a lot more of the gossip, some of the fun and games, and some of the tech experiences we had on next week's pod. But for this week, we're going to share just an excerpt of two of the presentations he and I did at our meet and greet in the suite. First up, you've got me on the parallels of poker and investing. And then at the back half of the episode, you've got Christoph on why investing is so hard, including a tool you can download right now to help you with the challenges you might face as an investor. Okay, I'm going to leave you to the episode. Hope you enjoy our two presentations and look forward to next week where we're going to share the real fun and games. Have a good one.
For an advertising-free version of this show, check out wallstreetwildlife.com.
The key message of what I want to talk to you about on the next 10 or so slides is the skills that make you a great poker player can also make you a great investor. And there's some case examples of this. So you might be familiar with some of the names on the screen. Carl Icahn was actually he's a famous investor, runs a big hedge fund. He was a professional poker player first, and he learned his business skills in the game of poker. Bill Ackman is a regular poker player, another famous business guy. David Einhorn entered a very big poker tournament. He's another famous business guy. He finished 6th in the big one for one drop, donated several $1 million to charity. So these business people play poker because their skill sets are aligned. And a couple of famous female poker players, poker pros, also have now gone into the world of business. So Vanessa Selbst, one of the most famous female poker players in the world. She now works for Bridgewater Associates as a senior consultant. Annie Duke became quite a famous author. She's written a book. She now consults to a lot of big organizations on decision making. And this overlap is not coincidental. The world of poker and the world of investing both involve probabilistic thinking and emotional discipline, and you've got to be comfortable with incomplete information. And that's why these two things, the skills, align. Everyone play chess? Yeah. Anyone ELO? Anyone know the ELO? No? Okay, no. But chess is very different to poker, right? It's all there, complete information. You see every piece, you can calculate, and computers are very good at playing chess because it's sort of a fixed domain. Poker is completely different, incomplete information. Your opponent is reacting to you, reacting to them, hidden information, probabilities, I think they might have this, they think I might have that. Life and investing is much more like poker than it is like chess. This hidden information in life. Everything we do, every decision we make, we're estimating probabilities about the future, weighing up what might happen, and using that, if we're smart about our decision making, to try and make better, optimal decisions. And this is uncomfortable for us as humans. We want to believe that we make decisions and a good outcome, if we make a good decision, we get a good outcome. And that's not always true. And it can be quite misleading. So in an investing sense, maybe we've all had this experience. You buy a great company, you have a good thesis, but it just doesn't perform. The ass falls out of the company, something goes wrong. Maybe you got it wrong, or maybe you've just been a bit unlucky, or you wanted some sort of return in a 2-year time frame, but you're going to have to wait 10 years. You made a good decision, but you got a bad outcome. And if we focus on, or the vice versa, maybe you made an ill-informed decision. You might have listened to me and Christoph rabbiting about some stock, gone, yep, great, I'm going to buy EOS, because Christoph said it's great. You haven't really made your own decision. You've just kind of followed one of these, YouTube idiots, and you've bought the stock, and the stock has maybe performed brilliantly. Well, you've made a bad quality decision, but you've got a good outcome. So the quality of your decision doesn't always drive the quality of your outcome, but we should focus not on outcomes in poker and in business. we should focus on making good decisions. Because if we consistently make good decisions, eventually we will get good outcomes. And we won't confuse ourselves about that. Position sizing. So I've got like a few slides now on actual skills we can apply in the world of poker and in the world of investing. Anyone familiar with like the concept of bankroll management or position sizing? Anyone want to tell me what they think that means? Christoph, are you good at bankroll management?
It's one of my weaknesses.
Is it? Yeah, okay.
I think, yeah.
So there's a good, if you're a professional poker player, whether you're a tournament player or a cash player, there's a good principle that you should never wager like all of the money, your bankroll, all the money you have on one session or one hand. And we'll use a poker thing here. So pocket aces, you get two cards in the game of Hold'em. If I have an ace and an ace, I'm probably 85% likely to beat any other random two cards. But 15% of the time I am going to lose. So it's probably fairly obvious for me to say, if I'm 80% likely to win, well, I should put all my money on this thing. But if I hit that 15% and I lose, I'm wiped out. I'm out of the game. So I want to bet enough that I'm going to get the benefit of my 85% edge, my advantage. But if I lose, I want to still be in the game because I want to make that same bet over and over and over again. And eventually, my aces will win consistently enough that I prosper. And you can apply that to investing too. If you have 45% of your investment portfolio in EOS, which Christoph did at one point before I talked him off the ledge, if that one company, tiny micro-cap company, has big problems, which they have run into recently, that's really hit you very hard and could set you back in life quite a long way. So you don't want to be all in on one thing. You want to be diversified. I did this myself with Rocket Lab. I had probably, even though I really believe in the company, and thank you, Simon Erickson, thank you, Simon, for Rocket Lab, 15% of really essentially my net worth in one company didn't seem like a smart risk decision. So I believe in the company, but I trimmed it back to 10%. And there's something called the Kelly Criterion that you can use. This is actually, it's a kind of formula, an approach you can use in the world of gambling. But I'll just give you a simple example, and then we can see how that links to investing. So let's say we flip a coin, heads or tails, and Tiffany, say if I say to you, every time it comes down heads, you're going to win $2, and if it comes down tails, you're going to lose $1. So that's a pretty good bet, right? Now, if you were to bet, let's say you bet all your money, and if it comes down heads, well, I've given you $2,000, you've got $3,000. But if it then comes down tails after that, you've gone from 3,000 to 0, so you've lost, you're out of the game. So that's very aggressive, probably not the way you want to play. Maybe you want to bet, if you had $1,000, maybe you want to bet half of that. So if you bet half of that, when you win a coin flip, you're going to win 1,000. Then when you lose the next coin flip, you're back to where you started. So what we want to find is the optimal amount for Tiffany to bet so that she grows her bankroll, but she minimizes her risk of ruin. So there's a formula that helps you work that out called Kelly. And in this particular case, Kelly says the optimal way to grow your bankroll, in this case where you're getting sort of 2 to 1, is to bet 25%. So if you were to bet 25% of your bankroll, so let's look at how that works in practice. So same thing, if you flip the coin, you win one and lose one. Well, when you win one, you've gone from $1,000 to $1,500. And then when you lose one, you come back down to $1,125. So if you were to keep betting 25% in this situation, you're unlikely to go broke. You might go broke if you spin a few tails in a row, but you're going to, in the long run, that's the way to maximize your game. So that's a tool that professional poker players use to work out how much of the money they have available to them to take into one session. And we can use the same thing in business to work out, for me, it was that sort of 15% is probably too much. So we can use that, we can apply that tool to work out like what's our kind of comfortable amount to have in one stock. For Christoph, 45% was probably too much. For me, old guy, 15% felt about right.
Small nuance. We talked about this on one pod. there's the stage in which you're starting and sizing bets. My problem with EOS was that it was up 1,000%. That's what Balloon did. So same as Luke's issue with Rocket Lab, but then you consider taxes and there's, so when I wanted to sell, we listen to the podcast where we talk about it. Luke's suggestion is don't let the tax dog wag the tail and so forth, but it's unfortunately in investing, it's not always as simple as just being bold from the start. It's like you have to modulate and pay attention to multiple factors, and they're not easy decisions necessarily. Though the math, by the way, the math is what it is, so you have to be very cautious when things balloon for whatever reason.
Right. So another tool we can use, pot odds and expected value, a way of like balancing your risk and your return. Again, we can apply as investors. So in the game of poker, even if you're unlikely to win, maybe you need a certain set of cards to come that will help you. Even if you think you're only, say, 17% chance likely to win, well, if it's only going to cost you $20 more, when you work out the benefit and the consequence, that actually makes sense. So you could be taking, you're making a bet that you're most likely to lose, but when you win enough that it compensates for that loss. And in the world of investing, we do the same thing. If a stock is down, is it a buying opportunity, or are we trying to catch a falling knife, is the saying, where we're sort of chasing a loss. And so we should always be thinking about, as investors, what are the possibilities? What could happen here? I'm not just so laser focused on this company is going to go to the moon and make me an absolute fortune. Maybe I'll say, well, 10% of the time this kind of thing's going to happen, and 30% of the time maybe government regulation's going to come in, or maybe Amazon's going to displace them. And we're always trying to think about the different sort of paths that our investments could take. And if you want to get really scientific, you could then say, well, okay, 10% of the time I might double my money, and 50% of the time maybe it's just going to meander along, nothing's going to happen, and 40% of the time maybe I'm going to get wiped out. And you can then start to do a little bit of math, thank you, a little bit of math to work out whether it makes sense to be in that stock. And if we get that wrong, we can do something called going on tilt in the poker game. Maybe you lose and you keep making good decisions, you keep losing. Well, you can get tilted. So, your emotions start to kind of take over and dominate. And if you let your emotions guide you at the poker table, you're potentially going to get in big trouble, because, you lose and you get some more money out and you keep losing, and eventually your emotions cause you to make worse and worse decisions. And that's when the sharks start to circle. I like to be one of the sharks and I chased a guy around the poker room and went from table to table because I knew he was on tilt and losing money, and I wanted to be the recipient of that money. Right? So, but that can happen in the world of investing too, when the ass falls out of one of our investments, and then our emotions, we either get greedy when we shouldn't be, and we start adding to it and doubling down on our losers. I've definitely been, I've done this in the past to my chagrin. So yeah, we try and avoid tilt, and a tool we can do that to avoid that is just to kind of write down, this is what I think is going to happen, this is why I'm making this investment. And even, you guys have heard me say this on the podcast in the past, if I'm planning to make an investment, I'll often put it in my to-do list and let it sit there and just stew for a month before I act on it, just to make sure it's not my emotions telling me to buy this thing because I'm greedy about it. And I can just kind of take a breath, come back to that idea, and then say, okay, maybe this is the right thing to do, then I'll act on it. Knowing when to fold is quite an important skill in the world of investing and in the world of poker. Sometimes it's right to fold some of the very strongest hands. I'll send you guys the slides, Aaron. No, you're welcome, but I'll send you the slides. Yeah. And we can get sort of stuck. I've got so much money in the pot. That if I look at all the money out there, it's like $1,000, and I'm like, 400 of that was mine. I've got to put more money in to try and get it back. And it hurts, but sometimes it's right to step away from that. And technically, Everything that's happened before is sunk cost, and it's only each decision I'm making. Should I make this call or make this bet? The money there. It's no longer mine. It's in the middle of the table. Is this individual decision the right decision to make? And that, again, we can apply to the world of investing. If we know the thesis of our companies, if the stock is dropping, if the thesis is still robust, well, then maybe we should be adding to it or sticking with it. If the thesis is broken and the investment is broken, then we need to be realistic with ourselves about that, and we need to know when to fold that investment. I did some analysis with Claude a few days ago, and I just gave every transaction I've done in the last 20 years as an investor, and all of the really big mistakes were me selling something I should have just stuck with. Claude told me off because in 2019 I decided Apple, I always write down my reason for doing something, and in 2019 I sold all my Apple stock, and my answer was, they've lost their culture of innovation, this company is just going to wither, and then it's gone on to like 5x since then, so Claude gave me a spanking for that, but correctly, so we get it wrong, but...
You had a theory and you acted on it.
Yeah, exactly,
The theory was kind of correct.
I think it was flawed, but you're right. I think the good thing, I had an idea, I articulated why I was doing the thing, so that's really important. I made a mistake, as it turned out, because Tim Cook led them in a completely different type of innovation, business model innovation. They did brilliantly.
But at the time, you made the right decision.
I made a decision, which in the end was proven to be the wrong one. But at least I think I could learn from that, because I talked about this on the recent episode. Like, rather than if just doing something just because I'm not having a concrete reason why I was doing a thing, I did a thing, I had a reason, so that's really useful. And I can look back at that and learn from it, because I can go, well, I thought they were going to fail for this reason. They actually succeeded, and I can learn from that. Yeah. Like, it's not in the deck, but what I've learned to do now, I think from that Apple experience, and you could have applied to the Chipotle thing, is if it's a good business and there's nothing wrong with it, fundamentally, always keep some skin in the game. So you might sell a lot of your position, but keep some exposure. So at least you...
Stop the FOMO.
Stop the FOMO, but also, that it's easier to add to something. I talked about this also a few episodes ago. I think the temptation for younger investors today is they're either all into something or they're out of something, and they kind of flip-flop between these two like black and white positions. And I now try and live in the nuance and live in the gray. And I've got a lot of things where I have a smaller allocation, a lot of things where I have a bigger allocation. But the benefit of that is if I have a small allocation to something, it's not a hard emotional decision to say, okay, I'm going to add a bit more to that and just grow it a little bit. But if I'm out of something, that's quite a material decision to say I'm going to go from not being an investor to being an investor again. So it's a bigger emotional jump. So by staying invested, I'm just adding and subtracting as I see fit. So I find that easier for myself. And if you kept a bit of Chipotle, you would have then been tracking the stock and saying, oh, actually I screwed up here. Like, it's on the way up. Maybe you'd have gone, eaten a bunch of more menu items and said, well, maybe I should add some more money to this. Yeah. Although the outcome we're looking for as long-term investors, maybe not, Christoph, when you do your short-term stuff, but I know you do long-term stuff too. I've got one investment that was like 250 times my money, Netflix at some point. I've got a few hundred times. I've got a handful of sort of 40 and 50 times investments. So you can't get a 50x if you sell when it's a 4x. No. So, yeah. Reading the table is like reading the market. So when you're playing the game of poker, and when we all play tomorrow, we'll be studying each other, hopefully, and looking to see, do I think Christoph's got a big hand, or is he bluffing me? And the temptation as a newer poker player is, and this is the sort of glamorization of poker. You look for tells, they twitch, or they eat the cookie, or, they take a drink or scratch their nose. It's not really how you read how another person is playing poker. The way to really study and read another opponent is what they do with their money. I don't want to use too much sort of technical poker language, but, if they've raised before the flop, and then after the flop, do they make another bet? And then do they bet again? Or are they maybe being a bit more conservative? Are they trying to trap me? Maybe they check, and then if I bet and they raise on top of me. So I'm studying their betting patterns, and you try and, as you become a more sophisticated poker player, you try and keep track of the kind of tools that someone else has in their arsenal and the kind of hands, but how strong they are. If they're strong, they do tend to do these type of things with the money. And if they're weak, they tend to do these other type of things. So that's kind of what you try to look for. And you can do the same thing in the market as well as an investor. So maybe you listen to an earnings call and the CEO sounds super bullish and analysts are saying, you know, this stock is going to do really well. But if insiders are actually selling their stock, well, you know, look at what people are doing, not what they say. Look at where they're managing their own money. And often that's a more accurate sort of pointer at what they really think. Although insiders sell for many reasons, so I don't put too much accent on that. Okay, table selection. So I said in South Lake Tahoe, there was a bad player who was on tilt and I chased him around the room. Like, our pride can get in the way of getting a good outcome. And as a poker player, really, our objective is to make money. And as investors, you know, we might want to help make the world a better place with our investments, but, you know, ultimately our goal is to grow our retirement account, make money. And so why, as a poker player, unless you're really trying to prove something, which most of us aren't, you know, if you want to win some big trophy and, you know, maybe go home with like a World Series bracelet, great, play the greatest players in the world. But if you're there to make money, then you really want to play the most inexperienced players you can find who are playing the highest stakes. So the technical term is bum hunting. As a poker player, I'm a bit of a bum hunter. Like, I'll look for the easiest table and I'll find the best seat at that table, and then I'll, you know, look for a weak player with a lot of money, and that'll be the person I'll be studying to try and, you know, get their chips into my stack. Like, why battle pros when there's a table of tourists? And the same thing, yeah, right. And it's the same in the world of investing, right? We're not trying to like prove we're the smartest guys in the room or anything. We're just trying to find like the right table to play at as investors. I know I'm a long-term investor, so I shy away from a lot of the tools that Christoph uses because I know that's not the arena I'm comfortable in. And I know a lot about a bunch of things around technology and space and things that interest me. I know nothing about, I don't know, fashion or retail, so I just don't invest in those sectors because there's so many people who know much more about that stuff than I do. So we've got to work out like our own place where we have an advantage, where we maybe, because of our hobbies or our passions or our interests, those are places to invest where we might have an edge on the market because we just naturally know more about that field. Yeah. And that is what we're doing with the Patreon, trying to get people who have different experiences and knowledge to share with each other. Yeah. Absolutely. Great. All right, I'm going to wrap up here, but like key takeaways, focus on process and making good decisions, not on good outcomes. If you keep making good quality decisions, eventually you're going to get good outcomes, even if you're a bit unlucky in the short term. Size your bets. Like, don't risk what you can afford to lose. Don't be overexposed to any one stock. If the thesis is broken, don't be afraid to fold. If management lies and you trust their integrity, get out. I know you're breaking that rule yourself, but possibly for good reasons. Manage tilt, like study yourself, be introspective, make sure you're not making an emotional decision, and maybe have an investing buddy or the Patreon where you say, I'm planning to do this, what do you guys think? Am I making a smart decision or a greedy or fearful decision? Find your table, like find the game, find the sector that you should be investing in. Maybe you love mega caps and giant companies, or maybe you're comfortable investing in tiny little micro caps. Maybe you're comfortable in like private investing, but find the area where you feel you're going to have an advantage. And then embrace variance. Like if you lose, don't worry, right? It happens. Like the Peter Lynch quote we gave on the podcast the other day, like the best people in this game we're still only going to be right 6 times out of 10. So if you make mistakes, that's just part of the process. And a Buffett quote to close us out: the money flows from the impatient to the patient. So I like that one because I'm a long-term holding guy. All right, there endeth my TED Talk.
Bravo.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the topic of my talk is what makes investing so hard? The answer, life. Done. So what do you think? Any questions?
Life can be a challenge, right?
Uh-huh. You know, it's interesting that initially I had thought I would present on a stock, on a specific stock. Peeling back the curtain, Luke and I are going to experiment with something very, very long form. So I've been researching the company AST, which is now my top holding in the King of the Jungle portfolio, now intensely and severely for a long time. But instead of doing that, I had a real change of heart. I didn't think it was as good as or appropriate as what I'm about to talk about, and it overlaps. My talk and Luke's talk, I think, are concentric Venn diagram-ish circles, especially since we're in Vegas, as a context for, again, life and why this is a fascinating place, but it's not an easy place. If it were easy, we'd all be, we wouldn't be talking. We wouldn't be having these get-togethers. And so I thought through, what is it really that makes investing in either in equity markets or in a place like this, or in just investing in whatever idea you might have, even in another person. So I'll return to the more literal, but I think this applies across the domains. The first thing I thought of is that in the shorter, medium-term world, price is everything. It's the sum parts of all the 1,000 variables you get at that one endpoint. And what's often maddening is the price decides to go in a different direction than what either you think or what even the fundamentals suggest or the story suggests in both directions. Like at the poker table, sometimes you're playing well but losing, and it's incredibly hard. It makes you doubt. On top of which, like in the poker world, people are deliberately trying to sell you untruth. And you learn this the hard way when you follow anybody in both directions. You have short sellers that profit when the thing goes down, and you have holders that profit when it goes up. And sometimes you're caught in this crossfire. I've been here so many times where I go on a walk in the evening and I think I'm kind of going nuts because I can't tell. It's just such a coordinated psyops in some ways that you begin doubting your own rational mind and process because it's by design. Talking about animal spirits, we're humans, and we primarily are rooted in survival. And so our instincts are first survive, which means we react instinctively, emotionally, because if we didn't, is that a lion or is that not a lion? So there's a lot of psychological theories, slow system, fast system, which one's better, which one's worse, how do they coordinate? But there's some biases we've identified over the long term of why our brain often tricks us into making poor decisions. And it's not, I guess all I'm saying is it's not something to think of as bad. It's just an intelligent adaptation to a particular context. which when you bring it to investing could be troublesome. Luke talked about this, I think, well in the poker analogy. I didn't write this fully on the slide, but look at this in both ways, both directions. Some people are quite aggressive to their own detriment because there is that deep satisfaction, and others are not aggressive enough when the facts suggest they ought to be. If life is a game of incomplete information, there is no ever one correct, true way to do things. But over time, you begin noticing that you've acted more cowardly, say. You should have, given that you will never know everything, your brain tricks you to thinking I will only act when I do know everything, for example. And the gambler idea is on the opposite side of that spectrum. This is why this idea of information overload is why I think Luke and I really love what we're doing. At this point, especially in 2026, I have a strong sense that as AI gets stronger, better, the analytics part of it is going to be farmed out, but what we're left with is just too much of it. And then who do you listen to? Where do you find the information? Who do you exclude? Who do you filter out? All these motives. And so at least what we're trying to do is create a gated community that says the people that are here and who we have not kicked out for whatever reason, they seem like good sources of information. Investing in life is also hard because we're pack animals, we're tribal. And again, our survival depends on it. It actually explains politics and the US moment of polarization very, very quickly. When your survival depends on staying in your tribe, and your tribe votes blue or votes red, for you to come out and say, I disagree, means banishment, means in our evolutionary sense, death, potentially. So for somebody to pivot based on rational argument is incredibly painful for a reason. And so we follow the herd. And paradox of investing is herd mentality makes bid and supply levels go up, but it's hard also to make profit when everybody's doing the same thing. So it's a paradox. Both are right and contradictory ideas. This also alludes a little to what Luke was saying. There are different games to be played that have to do with time horizon. You can get good at both, or multiple, if there are multiple games. But usually the mistake is people think they're playing one and they're actually acting in a different way. Long-term investors holding on too long, short-term investors not holding on long enough. And often the danger specifically is in the short-term stuff, it's the just constantly checking and your emotions override. And if you're making this mistake in the long-term way, it's maybe not paying attention enough and just putting your head in the sand and as a way to not deal with the emotions of possibly being wrong.
I think of myself as a long-term guy, and I've got things I've held for 20 years, but I still check my portfolio like 5 times a day.
Yeah.
Right, so what am I really?
You're a badger.
Perfect comeback.
Let's get that dopamine.
We get attached to our positions, especially if we've invested a lot of our time and effort into it. I mean, it's this one is really bittersweet when I talk about it, because if you think like an owner and you think like a human, you're investing in people, and people are building these things. And many of the things they're building are, amazing things.
You're also investing in your own work, that
Right.
you put into it.
Yeah.
So
And so we get attached. We marry that position. But the cruel reality is, from a technical standpoint, the market, I mean, it literally doesn't know, nor does it care. And we end up committing when the end of a marriage is the better move. Staying committed because of these attachments.
Luke also,
This one, I want to make myself an example with, because when you study one of the all-time greats, you see what made that great so good, but you don't see the 99% of reality. And because I've made every mistake imaginable and continue to make many mistakes, for at least what I think Luke and I are doing, it's an ever-evolving process where studying the mistakes, studying the things, reasons why we failed, what could we have done better, that probably is has more alpha, because it avoids the survivorship bias. And the last idea I want to share with you is that, like in poker, there is again, a paradoxical limit to, because we can never be sure about something, for those of us willing to do the work, we will put in the, I don't know what, hundreds of hours, or I don't know where I'm at with AST right now, an insane amount of hours, and it's because I want confidence. I want to know as much as possible, and yet there is a reality: the rocket might blow up. But if I do more research, the rocket maybe will blow up a little less. So I would say, yeah, it's hard. It's hard being alive. It's hard being an investor. Things are liable to eat you alive. And this is where I'm trying to lean into it more and more. I think I told you guys my PhD is grounded in Buddhist philosophy, and that whole tradition its bread and butter is learn to pay attention to your own mind and just notice what arises. And there are practices that it teaches, literally. It's a practice, it's not a theory. And so I thought I would infuse more of my own training to answer this question, like, how do we solve these difficulties? And so I have this framework, loose framework, that first, you really have to, all of these steps here, find your archetype, know what kind of investor you actually are, identify your own cognitive traps, then create a practice around that. Then you track your process. Actually track it, not have a thought come up and then go. We're lucky because psychologists have been studying this stuff now for some time, and there's a pretty robust database of the kinds of traps and mistakes we fall into. So I'm sitting here with all this information, and I'm actually mapping out the answer. Like, what can we do? What can we do differently? Know your biases. Have a pre-trade ritual that before you're about to act, pause. Actually say to yourself, did I sleep well? Am I anxious? Am I feeling vengeful? Do I have an idea, or is it my feelings? Because and then positioning, sizing, but the pause is so crucial as a fundamental idea. Then the tracking, there's different ways of tracking this stuff. From the moment to a trade log to this week, what happened as an arc, this month, this year. The best investors know themselves better than they know the market. This, I think, maybe is the most important thing I'm going to tell you in this talk. And I genuinely mean this when I say, at this point in my investing journey, a lot of this stuff can be very quickly dismissed. Like, yes, sure, right? I mean, emotions, don't be emotional, be more patient. You hear it, but my returns would have been multiples higher had I actually been able to do what I either knew I should do or learned too late and only can now start doing. But this is as serious an idea, I think, as I've ever had, like now in 2026. The people, in the age of AI, the people who will continue to flourish will be the ones that do this inner work. More and more, not less and less. And curiously, right now, pulling back the curtain even more, in my personal life, I'm dealing with what I would think is two of the more hardest moments that I've had in a very long time. So like there's legitimate pressure, very immense pressure on me, and I know that it's impacting me. My well-being, my state of mind, my sleep, all of it. I'd be a fool to say it's not changing the kinds of decisions I'm liable to make. So I played around with a way of creating enjoyable, entertaining way to kind of put names and ideas in these character archetypes so that we can study ourselves and say, yes, I am a thesis hawk. I look at the spreadsheets, but I ignore the fact that there's a giant war because I'm too focused, or the different varieties. And I came up with 13 of them. And so I've been doing nothing but studying the new AI tools, and with them now relatively in hand, I said, this is the next thing I wanted to build. And so I up and built an app to really see, like, what would this look like in a thing somebody could do stuff with. And so this is an app that has these features that the more I thought about what would I want to help me achieve all of these pauses and these self-reflections, and I just threw them all in an app, and I continued iterating and playing with it. And as of a few days ago, I survived the freaking the insanity that was actually getting it approved. And so it lives on the App Store now, and it's only going to get better. For those of you that know, I built what's it called, Wall Street Wildlife Options University. I included the features of this inside the Options University for free. But this, I wanted it to live on the Apple Store so the whole world could basically have access to it. So that,
It's called Investor's Mirror.
yeah, it's called the Investor's Mirror. And I didn't include here any of the screenshots or anything. And I know this is a little bit, feels a little self-serving here. Like I have this, here's my app, you know, you're stuck with me for this weekend, but.
Hey, we think it's fun. It's a cool. What are you talking about? I think it's cool at the inaugural meeting. It's big enough to have a private unveiling.
Right? Yeah. I'm like, if there's ever a chance to get over my, hesitations about self-promotion, like this is it. I'll tell you about one of these things, because when I made this, I'm like, I felt so satisfied that I thought of doing this. I built a module, I called it Memento Mori, where you enter your birth date, and then after you do that, it shows you, on the assumption you're going to live to 90, how many blocks, each week is a block of your life, how many blocks you have used, and how many you have left. In philosophy, there's no more poignant question that gets philosophers and people thinking, which is the inevitable end of life. But that's the journey that begins saying, I need to reflect on what I am, what I'm doing, what I ought to do with the rest of my life. And once you enter the portal through that, it's a lot easier to then journal and to meditate and to use some of these other tools that I just put in one spot. And so I hope you guys enjoyed playing around with it. I'm still getting new with the free tier, and then the premium tier. I gave enough of the free stuff so people could legitimately just use it every so often, the meditation stuff. But I'm trying to, grow this thing and see if it provides value. So anyway, I hope you enjoy it on whatever level.
If it's even close to your
Here's what I could generally tell you is that this thesis statement here, the mindful investor outperforms the reactive one, not because they know more, but because they know themselves. Mm-hmm. I truly believe that. That is in no way a sales pitch and so if that is true, then yes, then I imagine, regarding specifically an app like this, then it becomes a matter of the marketing and the dissemination but I would stand by the actual modules 100%. So I'm trying to put something out in the world that I know will help. And then it's, so.
A reminder that the people on this program may hold positions in the companies that are mentioned. Buying and selling stock carries financial risk, which could include loss of capital. The views in this program should not be taken as personalized advice. Before acting on any of the information provided, listeners are encouraged to consult a financial or tax professional.